let's talk about our second topic, which is interviewing.
Sure.
This is obviously a topic that, as you can imagine, comes up a ton. What are your high-level thoughts on interviewing before we dive into questions?
Oh yeah. I think some of that is going to come out in the in the Q&A, but I just really want to emphasize how important communication is. A lot of people coming to these interviews thinking, like for product sense or product strategy, oh, I just need to come up with these brilliant ideas that I'm going to win. It's really about your ability to be systematic, thoughtful, a strong communicator. Those are the things you're really judged on, and much less the sort of substance of what you're saying. And those skills are really important to get to a good place.
That's very helpful. I'm going to post a link to your free product manager interview course where you really expand on some of those thoughts. So if anybody wants to sign up, there you go. You can take the course with David. And let's dive into these questions. This is going to be probably the meat of the questions we'll tackle today, because the interview sometimes feels like such a mystery and such a black box. Thousands and thousands of people apply to these very coveted product manager jobs. Netflix, Facebook, Google, Amazon. Very few people get selected. And there's a ton of mystery around why some people never even get a callback, or if the interview, why they don't get selected. So what we're going to spend some time on is really pick David's brain around that. David's been on hiring committees, hiring product managers, and so his insight here could be especially valuable if you're applying or looking to apply for some of these roles. So let's start at the very beginning. There's a lot of differing opinions on whether you should prepare at all. So assuming that you're choosing to prepare for this interview, can you tell us a little bit about how long we should prepare for and maybe what your process is around this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy we have this question because I really want to make sure that we set expectations on this. Getting one of these jobs is really difficult. It is an incredibly rewarding, super interesting job, but especially at the beginning, it's very difficult to get one of these jobs. Most of the people I know I work with, even very seasoned people, take sort of bare minimum 3 months to get from kind of nothing to an offer, and maybe closer to 6 months or more. And just, I want to convey this to you as well, as somebody who's been through this, and you might be in this as well. It's a difficult process. It's frustration. The rejections are going to beat you down. It is difficult. And if you're in the thick of it right now, I want to let you know that you're not alone. Everybody you know has gone through this. You're going to take a beating. I mean, in the end, there's going to be something for you, but it's a tough process, and handling rejection is really difficult.
That makes sense. And of course, even the most talented people often get rejected for these interviews.
Definitely. Super talented people, routinely get 10 plus rejections. If you've never interviewed at this level, you're getting it more than that. Don't let yourself get discouraged. This is the standard experience. It truly is.
So can we talk very tactically?
Sure.
What would you recommend? How should people prepare?
Yeah, and I believe this is the one where we have a slide after here with just a few links. And I figured I'd put this up for us to talk about. So 4 types, 3 or 4, I mean, Google's sort of an exception here, but 3 main types with this additional one of interviews. And let's go through each of these because you have to prepare for each individually. Product sense or product strategy or product design, as it's variously known. This is a question like, designed design an alarm clock for the blind, maybe more stretch, or like help Facebook build a marketplace product or something like that. These questions, if you haven't already, there's some books out there that you should that's a first pass. It's not going to be enough in itself to get you to the finish line. I highly recommend, of course, we've talked about before, lots of stuff you're not going to read anywhere else. This is again, communication super important here. Having a crisp framework, really helpful. And then there's a lot of tactical tips in the YouTube playlist that's linked there. Most people tend to spend 90% of the time on product sense, and certainly product sense is important, but I really want to emphasize the execution analytics interview and also the behavioral interview are super, super important. So execution/analytics. This is an interview where you're going to be asked about metrics, how you think about data. There is far less information on this. The books are not going to be nearly helpful enough for this, and this is super, super important. Again, best thing I have to recommend for that is still the course, especially for the execution analytics. There's a lot of stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else about how to think crisply about goals, what are good goals, what are good metrics to measure, and we can talk a bit about some specific things there. Now let's talk briefly about the technical interview. This is a Google-only thing. You might have a few startups that also probe on this, but by and large, this is kind of mainly Google thing. People tend to be anxious about this interview. It's very high level. If you have technical background or you just have a understanding of technical systems in some broad way, you should be absolutely okay for passing that interview. If you don't have anything at all, we have a link here that's designed for engineers. This link is targeted as engineers, so maybe not. This is a little more in depth than you probably need, but a cursory look at that should help you. And if you have trouble with the concepts, you might need to do more research, like database concepts, for example, system design concepts you'll need. And then the last bullet point here is behavioral, and this I want to really emphasize this strongly with you. People tend to go ham on the product sense, and then to a lesser extent the execution interview, but the behavioral interview is so incredibly important. Fundamentally, the hiring manager is making a bet on your personality and your ability to get stuff done, and that is a huge bet. This is a major thing they're investing in, and you need to connect with them. People tend to really underestimate how important the behavioral interview is. Things to practice there. You need to have a good inventory of stories. And then I really recommend that you do real mock interviews with actual hiring managers. Now, they don't have to be product management hiring managers, but if you have anybody in your network, even if they're a distant connection, just spending a few interactions with people who actually hire in these positions is really going to help you realize where your stories might be a little more fuzzy or a little overly detailed. One last tidbit I'll touch on behavioral interviews here. The biggest mistake I see made in behavioral interviews by far is what I'd call product over people. So, you're telling a story about a situation and it's all about like, well, there was this big decision to be made and here's all the reasons why I was right on this decision and everybody else was wrong. And in the end, I was right and look how smart I am. That's not the kinds of things people want to hear. What they really care about is stories of interpersonal character. So that same story, but the flavor of like, well, you were right, and less about the details about why you were right, but how did you manage the interpersonal interaction with people to overcome that? How did you get everybody rowing in the same directions? And what are your insights into how to do that effectively? So if you can just put together 3, 4, 5 stories of interpersonal interactions, times of difficulty with your manager, with people on the team, with peers, and how you overcome interpersonal issues. Those are the kinds of things that really help you.
Got it. So there's a lot to unpack here. When you said let's go ham, you really went ham on this. So let's kind of go back a little bit and let's talk through some of these a little bit more in detail.
Sure.
So some of the links that you put up here that I shared with folks as well for product sense and execution, these are part of the product manager course that I shared with you earlier. So you don't need these links separately. Just open the product manager course and scroll to the section, and you can watch all of these videos for free. Decode and Conquer is a book you can order on Amazon. It is a book of case studies for product managers, and I linked it over there for you so you can take a look at it. And then the educative.io course for grokking the system interview, I put that link on the side for you as well. I want to make sure that I mention we're not affiliated with Educative or with Decode and Conquer. These are just resources that we think would be helpful for you. With that said, one thing we should mention about Decode and Conquer specifically is it is a little bit outdated. And so I want to just spend a little bit of time on this because as people start to prepare, there's a lot of methods shared in that book that might not be as current right now. So for instance, the circles method. So can we spend just a moment on talking about how to use Decode and Conquer as a resource? Because I don't want folks to pick it up blindly and just feel like everything in there is right. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy you brought this up. And it is absolutely the case that if you just blindly do what's in Decode and Conquer and show up to the interview, you're not going to get the job. It's quite outdated. And I think a lot of the methods may have worked in a world where, these jobs weren't as competitive, but things have shifted a lot. The circles method in particular, we have a YouTube video on this with a lot more detail, but it will really lead you in a place where you box yourself in a pretty narrow search space. What I mean by that is the interviewer really wants to hear a few big, ambitious, interesting ideas rather than a lot of incremental things. And if you follow circles or some other derivatives, you're really going to get yourself in the realm of small incremental ideas that target a small pain point really reliably, and that's a bad place to be.
Got it. And so let's talk about the flip side. What about that book is helpful? What are things in that book that people do want to take away from reading?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've never heard about these interviews at all, that's just the best place to start in terms of like just covering the absolute basics, the types of questions you're likely to hear. So for that, that's helpful. There's also a chapter on estimation, which is a Google-only thing. I think that's probably a decent start at that as well.
Great. And one of the kind of things you mentioned when you started talking about behavioral interviews is how important it is to mock with real hiring managers. And I want to dwell on this point a little bit because there are a lot of product manager communities, both on Facebook and on Slack, who let you mock with people who are your peers. And I think this is one of the more popular ways that folks are preparing for interviews right now is they find partners to mock on these platforms. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really have a lot of difficulty with those. I've worked with a lot of candidates that had gone through these peer-to-peer mock interview places. And the honest truth is really often it reinforces bad behaviors. It's like just frankly a lot of sort of blind leading the blind. I know people are really well-intentioned and really mean the best, but it's difficult to get the kind of quality of feedback that you need to pass, a very difficult thing. My advice here is like a lot of the advice I give in general. You just need to hustle a bit more to get in front of real people in these jobs. And maybe this sounds daunting, but people in tech are just extremely eager to help each other. Even if you have a second-degree connection on LinkedIn with somebody at one of these companies or the ex-Facebook or something like that, maybe you went to the same university or something like that, totally fair to email them. And if your request is kind and thoughtful, they'll be eager to spend half an hour with you on the phone. Another thing that I've seen help as well is recording yourself. It's a little painful as somebody who's done it, but if you have it in you to spend an hour going through a sample thing in front of the camera and then looking over, you're going to see a lot of things that are just kind of very obviously like, wow, yeah, I could do that better.
That makes sense. And I think, just to sort of summarize, I think where people have incredibly good intentions on these platforms and really want to help each other and support each other as a community, it is definitely like the blind leading the blind. Somebody who has never had a job at Google will not teach you how to get to Google and won't be a good source of feedback for you of what Google looks for. Even if, they have a ton of insight or information, they don't really know what it's like. And there's also a reason why they don't have the job yet. So finding people who are already in those positions is your best bet. Your second best bet is really to video yourself and to spend a lot of time on behavioral interviews with folks that are not necessarily product managers, but hiring managers, and then to find people that are PMs at these companies, even if they're not at Google, Facebook, Netflix, even if they're a PM at Uber, somebody who is already a PM at a larger top tier company who could help mock with you is a million times better than somebody on a platform who is trying to land a product manager job but does not have any experience at a big company. To summarize what you said.
Absolutely.
I think that's a little bit counter advice or controversial advice, because a lot of the standard advice is to do quite the opposite. So I just wanted to spend a moment on this to make sure folks understand.
Absolutely. And I want to underline that point. A lot of the standard advice you're going to read around product management interviews is just like really wrong, in many cases actively harmful. The circles method is one of them we feel really strongly about. Peer mocking is one as well. Can't recommend this course enough, to be honest, because I think, we recorded it, sort of set the record straight on a lot of this.
Yeah, and it's free. The reason why we made it free is, we really felt like there was so much misinformation in the community, and people who are incredibly talented and really deserve to be in one of these organizations were being locked out of these jobs simply because there's not enough information. And if you were like an underrepresented person or didn't have somebody in your network who is a PM, and you're 100% relying just on these peer marketplaces to get help, you would have had no chance to get in. We really want to even the playing field, to give everybody an opportunity to learn what it is to actually do this. So if you put in the hard work, you can get these jobs reliably. So let's talk a little bit about coaches. We talked about peers. So let's talk about coaches. Should people get a coach? Who are good coaches if people should get one? So for instance, is it an executive coach? Who are these people? Who should you approach?
Yeah, definitely. There are services out there that will connect you with a product management coach, somebody who has had experience in a FAANG company or a top tier tech company as a product manager. If they have that background, that would kind of pass muster to give it a shot. It is pretty expensive, but I do think it's worth the investment. Get a lot of value just being able to get that real feedback from somebody, and especially if you're a little bit out, not so connected in tech, or more anxious about reaching out to people cold, it's worth it. In terms of more generalized coaches, you might find some help in general job coaches for the behavioral part. If you find a really quality one, that could be helpful, but by and large, not as helpful for product management.
So if you do decide that you want to go and find a product manager coach, somebody who has been a PM, what are you looking for in their background to judge whether they would be good in helping you prep?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of basic requirement is that they've had that job at a big tech company. And ideally they have had it for a few years. That's sort of absolute bare requirement, and that they've been on interviews themselves. These absolute bare requirements. And then I think there's a lot of variability in kind of they may be great product managers, but that's different than them being great coaches. So that's something you can only really tease out from referrals or other people that work with them. It's also reasonable to ask the coach, hey, can you talk to somebody you've worked with before? So those are things you could do.
Sure. And I think, one thing that we found is there are services out there that offer this, and they are definitely quite expensive, usually like over $200 an hour to prep. We typically recommend that you only do this if you are very, very prepared and have done a ton of your own work already.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we recommend it when you've already passed at least one round of interviews with, let's say, Facebook, and now you're going for the second round. It's not necessarily something that you should invest in very heavily if you have never ever interviewed, and you have also not done a lot of your own work up front. There are a lot of great resources out there and case studies you could use to really prep yourself. So when you do engage, whether you choose to engage with these coaches or not, but if you do engage with them, you are getting your money's worth because it is, again, extremely expensive to do this. So let's talk about product sense. Product sense is something that in product design, as it's called at Google, it is something that I think candidates struggle with a ton. And not nailing this section is a major reason for rejection. We talked about the circles method. What are some other reasons that candidates fail the product sense and product design question types?
Yeah, we talked a bit about this earlier, but in some way or another, the number one reason is almost always connected to a root cause of a communication issue. What that means is, the feedback might read something along the lines of your scatterbrain or your thoughts weren't clear, or you didn't respond to probing in a crisp way, or you're generally kind of muddy with your thinking. This is an extremely common kind of pushback. And just to be clear, it just requires a very high level of communication ability to have one of these jobs. So even, one or two minor things is absolutely enough to derail the candidacy.
Interesting. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but maybe before we even dive into this, can we take a step back and give us a high level of, I'm an interviewer and I'm asking you a product sense question. What do I expect that you do?
Yeah, certainly. You're expecting me to lay out, for product sense at least, lay out a clear framework of how we're going to think through the decision, be very deliberate and meticulous in exploring each of those sections one by one, being thoughtful and thorough in my thinking, being very clear when I communicate ideas to you. If you push back, that I respond with a clear response that really addresses and really understands the issue you had. This is a common source of concern. And then throughout the interview, that you have reasonable product assumptions. You don't need to be some product visionary, but that you have reasonable assumptions about the world. And that in the end, you're able to generate some interesting, ambitious, thoughtful ideas that aren't so obvious, also valued. Yeah.
Great. So that does make sense then, that if you are not a clear communicator and you don't kind of follow a framework as you answer the question, that's one of the main reasons why you might get rejected.
And to double click on that a little bit more, for one quick tactical tip you can take away right away, very frequently the issue I see happen is this following kind of viral loop. Let's just dig into it. So you're doing your presentation and you're talking about something that isn't so clear. You're in the product sense framework, you're not so confident about what you're saying. The interview asks you a question because they detect that you're uncertain about what you're saying and you're kind of blabbering around. The interview asks you a question and then you're like, oh shit, you don't know an answer, and then you pull something together that's just a fumble and really doesn't go anywhere and is really muddy thinking. This is a really common thing. And then there's a back and forth more. You feel weaker, you feel more uncertain. The interviewer picks up right on that, continues to probe. You're getting probes, you're freaking out more, and your communication is continuing to be worse. This is a very common thing. Just one interaction like this is enough to put the whole thing to bed. And the biggest tactical piece of feedback I have for you, and I think that I've seen really improve performance, despite how simple it is to, when you're not sure what you're about to say, just tell the interviewer, I need a few minutes to collect my thoughts. Let me come back to you. And take a paper and jot down a few bullet points. If you do that systematically, as quickly as possible, when you realize that what you're saying isn't crisp, you're going to become so much stronger.
And I think, kind of to your core point, these interviews are about how strong of a communicator you are. In some cases, as a product manager at a FAANG, you're responsible for, tens of millions of dollars, or even hundreds of millions of dollars, in your case at Lyft, of a line of business. And so in order for a company to trust you with that insane amount of responsibility, one of the core and kind of basic requirements they're looking for is for you to be a clear enough communicator to be able to tackle all of the stakeholders you will have to wrangle in your role as a PM. So let's talk a little bit about execution. This is another question type that is difficult. Execution is an analytical question type. It's called execution at Facebook. Can you tell us a little bit about the 3 different types of questions we might encounter here? And what folks should be prepared for?
Absolutely. First is goal setting. This is very common, basically everywhere. This is a question of the form. You're the product manager in charge of X product. What would you set as the goal, as the main metric, the hero metric for the product? Thinking thoughtfully about that and what the drawbacks are of your goal and what bad behavior your goal might generate, how you can account for that is really important. Second type is troubleshooting. This is a question of the form. You come to work one day and this X metric is down 20%. What would you look at? There is more about being exhaustive and really having a lot of ideas of what to look at. The third type is trade-offs. This is often framed in an A/B test kind of question. So we launched an A/B test that maybe worsens, if it's a Facebook case, worsens how deep people go in the news feed, but makes them come more often to the feed or something like that. Or, and the question is, how would you decide whether to ship it? So there's a trade-off. Something was good and something was bad. How do we decide? There's a lot to know about how to think clearly about that question, especially if you haven't done a lot of these kind of analytical trade-offs in your day job before. I think the videos are really, really good on this particular point. And then the last one, which is kind of an asterisk, fourth one, is estimation. That's only Google. Fortunately, that's not my favorite question at all, but it is sort of a mainstay of Google interviews. And that's something you should practice if you're going through Google.
Great. So I think a lot of emphasis when folks do prep is paid on these execution questions or analytical questions, and definitely on product sense, because they're very specific to being a product manager. But in terms of behavioral interviewers, we see that a lot of people under-prepare for these because they feel like, well, I should be able to answer these questions off the cuff. You talked a little bit about the importance of these. Can you reiterate why does it matter for Facebook and Google specifically? If you're flawless at execution, or if you're a genius on, product strategy or product sense, does this behavioral question even move the needle?
Most definitely. And I've already emphasized how important it is, and I really can't say this strong enough. These jobs are dealing with people all day, every day, just countless interactions with people, and being good at that, being even 10% better at that is a dramatic difference in the outcomes you're going to get. And some people are 10x, better at this. At the kind of strong interpersonal interactions. Very important to do this well. It is absolutely something you can get better with practice. Stories in particular, if you just do it once without practice, the stories are going to be horrible. I'm just going to say it like it is. This is something, telling quality stories that sort of have an arc and are sufficiently high level to be helpful and really focus on the interpersonal qualities and have a good learning at the end. These are things that are something you need to practice.
Got it. Sometimes even people that are already passed, so we see a lot of people that go through Netflix, Amazon, Google, and then at the very end, after they've done the video, they've done the on-site loop, they're asked to re-interview. Why does this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually fairly common. And the thing I want to get out the way and make sure you understand is that big tech companies like Facebook, if you get asked to come back to redo like the execution interview, it's not because you did something wrong in the execution interview. If your case was marginal, Facebook would have said no. That's the rule. You asked to come back because Facebook thinks they did something wrong. So something like that, the interview, the feedback notes were not clear enough, or the interviewer went on vacation, or people don't think they're sufficiently calibrated to trust their judgment on you, or things of that nature. So my message here is a lot of people try to dissect what exactly happened in the original interview and try to really overcorrect for that. There isn't much to figure out. Facebook thinks they screwed up and they're giving you another chance because they screwed up. You really shouldn't try to overly correct for any sort of perceived mistakes you think you made.
Got it. What happens behind the scenes at an interview? We've talked a ton about what the candidate experience would be. As a hiring manager, what actually happens on the other side?
Sure, absolutely. So when it comes to the screen, Well, the process works the same for both the screen and the onsite in the sense that the interviewer is they have 24 hours to put together their notes about what happened. And these notes are fairly detailed. They walk really meticulously through kind of what you did and the observations of the interviewers, positive and negative. And then they assign you a score. People really tend to put a lot of focus on the score, but I'll talk through this, and it's not so important. It's just a high-level indication. But people that had sometimes people that had a bunch of no's and a bunch of negative scores get in because the hiring manager saw the feedback and was happy with some of the drawbacks that was there and was willing to live with it and was really excited about the good points, or vice versa. Sometimes people have flying color scores, but there's a red flag in the notes, and that's enough. So for the screen phase, both interviewers will put their notes, and then the recruiter will look at it, make kind of a gut decision on whether they think you have a shot. So the decision there is with the recruiter. And then when it comes to the on-site, then similar process, the recruiter will look it over and think, well, I think this person has a shot. And then if it passes that kind of basic bar of the recruiter, then it goes to the hiring committee, which will review everything in totality. They read all the notes really carefully and really try to get a holistic picture of what kind of person you are, look at your resume as well, and then they make a decision based on it.
Candor helps tech professionals get paid more.